For some of you, your garden may have just burnt up during the summer, and you may have felt the need to pull all of your plants. Other people, you may have been like, I'm really sick of squash. I'm done. Those are coming out of my garden. For the rest of you, you just may not have known that the only plants that you need to pull up after they're finished producing are things like determinate tomatoes, where they're basically going to give you one big bumper crop and the plant is finished. Everything else will continue to produce fruit for very long periods of time unless pest or cold kills it. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Starkey Farmstead. So let's talk about the difference between your summer and your fall garden. The difference is what food you put in it. That's it. What do I mean by that? All of my summer plants that I planted in April and March are still in my garden at the end of July. They're still producing food for me. On top of that, I'm succession planting because I have a super long grow season here in Southeast Louisiana. I'm in 9A/9B, which means I can grow summer-loving vegetables all the way up until about the beginning of November. So I'm going to succession plant, and I already have corn, okra, cucumber, things like that to get a big bumper crop through the fall. Now, depending on where you live, you may have a much earlier frost date, like say mid-September or the early part of October. You might not be able to succession plant any more of your summer-loving, heat-loving vegetables. But guys, don't pull up those plants. If they're still bearing fruits, leave them. My watermelon has babies all over it. So I came out here this morning, I took a little peek at it, and I'm like, wow, this plant's still really producing. Look at the babies coming up, right? So I'm getting continual new growth, new baby watermelons all over this plant. So I'm not gonna pull this plant up until the frost kills it. My pumpkin plant is still flowering. The cantaloupe's still producing cantaloupe. The squash plant, still producing squash. The tomato plant's still producing tomatoes. Just remember that we think of food by holidays here in America especially. I don't know about the rest of the world, but we think of food and we attach it to a holiday. Pumpkins, harvest time, Halloween, that kind of stuff, Thanksgiving. But really, pumpkins are in a specific family of vegetables, and they can begin growing as soon as the soil is warm enough and you're past your last frost of the year. So you need to understand the family of vegetables that you are planting in your spring and your summer garden. If those vegetables like heat, like I said, there's no reason to take it out of your garden before it is finished growing food for you. Now, I have noticed this with people. Your plants begin to slow down production really heavy around August. Now, some people say it's heat, and it might be a little bit heat, but I'm really going to tell you what the catch is. You're not harvesting enough. If you have an okra plant growing, you need to be checking it every single day. You need to be harvesting off that okra every single day. Same with squash, tomato. Once they start turning red and they get a good deep blush to them, I have to pick them, because if I don't, well, the mice or the birds will eat them. So I pick them. Well, that tells the plant that it needs to produce more seeds, right? So your plant is not producing food for you. Your plant is producing food for a succession so that its DNA does not die, so that another generation of that plant will live. So if you continue to pull the fruit and the vegetables off of that plant, you're confusing it. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, darn. There are no right seeds hitting the ground because something keeps taking my seeds. That's how your plant thinks. So the more that you harvest off of a plant, the more food that plant is going to produce. It's a very simple concept, but people don't seem to get it. My dad taught me that. 81-year-old Papa Sammy. If you've not checked out his YouTube, he is brilliant. Pawpaw Sammy and Alley-Bug. Go check him out on YouTube. He's amazing. So guys, basically every day, harvest, 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 harvest. And the more that you harvest, the more that plant's going to produce. That's why my pumpkin plant is still producing. Because as soon as those pumpkins started ripening and they were good enough to eat, I took them, okay? As soon as the squash pops up, the first couple of squash I get when they're this big, I take them. So the plant's like, oh, fudge sickle, produces a bunch more flowers, they get pollinated, a bunch more fruit pops up, and then I start letting them grow to the size that I want. You gotta outthink your plant. In fact, you gotta think like a plant. Now, if your garden is just looking worse for the wear because it has been an extremely hot summer, my advice to you is Foilular spray some worm tea. Worm tea is basically body armor. It's like me wearing these long sleeves. It's like sunblock. Spray your plants down. Give them a break from the heat. The worm tea basically will coat the leaves and protect it from the sun's harmful rays, basically. And it'll give your plant like a cold glass of lemonade on a very hot day. It'll just refresh it. But I'm hearing a lot of people tell me, well, I'm pulling up my summer garden. And my question to you is why? Has pest invaded and the garden's just done? Are all your plants dying? Because if neither of those things have happened, leave your plants there. This is a time of year that you side dress with some more fertilizer so that your plants have the food to make it another 3 months. For fertilizer for me is going to be a combination of worm castings, compost, rabbit manure that I put around the root zone. It's going to be Foilular sprays. So guys, I hope that this video really helps you. I hope that it helps you understand that your plants aren't finished, especially if you live anywhere from zone 5 all the way to zone 9B. You can continue to harvest off your summer garden until the first frost comes. There's no reason to pull up those healthy producing plants. Now here at Starkey Farmstead, like I said, I'm in zone 9A, 9B. What Sam is doing is starting to add in my cool crops. Like I began to add in beets, turnips. I've got my lettuces and my carrots ready to go. Those will go in the ground at the very, very end of September. I'm beginning to prep the areas that I'm going to be putting in things like mustard greens, collard greens. I'm getting ready for my fall crops, but I'm still babying my garden to produce all my summer crops. That way, my summer crops, my fall crops are running into each other. And I'm going to be harvesting from what I've sown in April and May and what I've sown in July and August at the same time. So don't cut yourself short. Your vegetables and your fruiting trees and your plants in your garden can give you more than you're expecting out of them. Set your expectations high. Set yourself up to actually conquer it. Don't set yourself up to fail. Don't pull out healthy producing plants because somebody told you it's time for a fall garden. Mix them together. Unless you're just in a climate where literally we're moving into August and your nights are starting to get cool. In that case, you probably only have a few more weeks that your summer garden's gonna produce anyway. For me, I have literally picked tomatoes on this property at the beginning of December. So I'm telling you, don't pull those plants until the frost hits. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for rowing in our boat and letting us row in yours.